Welcome, everybody, to the next episode of the Living Fast podcast. I'm your host, Weston Zawana, and I'm joined by my co-host, Jake Perkins.
How's it going, guys?
Yeah. We're absolutely pumped to have one of the most interesting characters in all of Vancouver on the podcast, Ayhab Farhat, one of my mentors in terms of mental resilience, mental toughness, and just tapping into that mind-body connection that so many listeners out there want to really unlock. And before I get going, I want to mention that this podcast is sponsored or presented by Locked In, the ultimate high performance brand for high performers. If you guys want to get locked in, go to getlockedin.com and you can be just as locked in as all of us on this podcast. But Ayhab, how we do it at Living Fast is we like to make people feel comfortable. We like genuine conversations. I think that the most value is in people's stories, and how people let off stories is they let their guards down, they feel comfortable. So if you were to come on here and really provide the most value, where do you want to start off?
Yeah, you mentioned that earlier, and I love that question. I think in terms of, like, you mentioned earlier, people having an idea of what they want to talk about when they come on here. I had kind of no idea what we were going to talk about. I understand that, you mentioned like the mind-body connection, which is basically the premise of most of my content. I'm working on kind of expanding that because it goes so much further than that. I think I use I illustrate on my platform through dunking and movement and kind of like the unfolding potential of the human body. I use that as a platform or kind of like more of like a vector to illustrate how with our minds we can actually do anything that we can imagine ourselves to do. Yeah. So for me, I enjoy dunking. I enjoy moving. I think that really calls to me. It's actually calling to me, and it's pulling me in that direction so that I show up and I kind of prime myself to a point where I listen or, feel what am I going to do next?
Yeah. So as a guy who can't dunk, how old were you when you first dunked?
My first dunk was,
you better not say like 10.
No, it wasn't 10, but 10. I started playing basketball a little bit late. Crazy. But my first, like, you have to understand, first of all, I'm like 6'2".
Yeah.
So
you got the height.
I have the height.
Yeah.
So just because I get like a dunk doesn't mean that I'm like a dunker.
Sure.
Okay. So my first dunk was at 15.
Okay. That's pretty badass.
Yeah, 15. But it wasn't like I, was someone that was dunking in games until, I had flashes of that, but I didn't really understand how to do that until, honestly, after my 30s. Yeah.
And you played pro basketball, eh?
Mm-hmm.
Where'd you play again?
I played in Lebanon.
Okay.
Yeah.
Super cool. How many years was that?
Around like 5 or 6 years, between 5 and 6 years, because I would play in the summers and during the season.
Yeah.
And then come back to the States because I grew up in Austin, Texas.
Oh, no shit.
So yeah, I would go back to the States and just train.
I was just down there in July.
In Austin?
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Fun city.
What were you doing?
I'm trying to remember. We were actually thinking possibly of making a move there at some point.
Okay.
We went down to check it out.
Yeah.
Dude, one of the most memorable Friday nights of the last little while. We went down to this one creek. So the big river, what's it called again?
Lake Travis? Well, no, the big river.
The big river right through the middle of the city, like through downtown. You know what I'm talking about, though?
Mm-hmm.
So we kayaked down it and then went down this little like inlet. And I'm trying to remember.
It's called Lady Bird Lake. It's actually a lake. It's just a long lake. Yeah.
And it was like straight out of a country song. We like started going down, and there was like folks on the mud bank with just beers, and like there was a little flotilla of like kayaks and paddleboards.
Oh yeah, the stand-up paddleboard. It's super picturesque. Yeah, very Austin.
I have not been to Austin, but I've been to Houston, and Texas is great. The whole Texas is just unreal. Like, speaking of Texas is unreal, what brought you to Vancouver? Like, what was the shift? Like, I think I just needed.
I grew up. I was telling you guys earlier, like in a Muslim family. I grew up. I'm Lebanese, and so the political, cultural climate there wasn't really like inviting for people of like multicultural backgrounds and ethnicities. So when I came to Vancouver, and then I was like traveling quite a bit for basketball, playing pro in Lebanon. I was traveling into Europe and just seeing different parts of the world. And when I visited Vancouver in 2015, it was the first city in North America where I felt like I noticed there was a lot of people from other like cultures here as well. But regardless, like I've been to cities where there are people from with different cultures. Like New York City is very, for example, it's very multicultural. But I felt like a person here. I didn't feel like a Lebanese person or a Muslim person or an Arab. I just felt not even at home. I just felt like a guy. I felt like a human, and that was like a very interesting, like honestly, like an epiphany. It was a paradigm shift because growing up in Texas, I was always like first and foremost, I think this goes into like what I would like to talk about on this later on, but it's like you put yourself in a container based on your identity. And the identity that I put myself in was like, I am an immigrant. People look at me like post 9/11 in a certain way. Therefore, I am first that, and then I can try to show up and like, when someone tells me like, oh, you're a terrorist, or, oh, your family.
Do
like
people say shit like that to you?
No, yeah, for sure.
Really?
So like,
that's crazy.
Yeah. Like, or just, no, not here.
In
Texas. In Texas. So that, like my point is that contrast, when I came here and noticed that it doesn't really exist here just because of how diverse it is.
Right.
It was so refreshing. I'm like, I have to move here.
Yeah.
And then the tech scene, I was really interested. I'm still super interested in technology, like innovation and technology in general. Tech scene is very like big here.
Yeah, you did cybersecurity, right?
Mm-hmm.
Good city.
So I just kind of like jumped in the tech industry and then grew professionally, personally, spiritually, mentally, and then kind of pivoted away from the corporate world and then started my own coaching business.
What was that point for you, like where you wanted to make that switch? Because I know, like speaking from my own experience, definitely that jump, there was definitely a moment for me. Did you have some of the same for that? Like going from the corporate world to be like, I want to kind of, branch out something more authentically you, because you're definitely doing some cool things right now.
Thank you. Yeah, it's definitely, I think I always knew that I would had like an entrepreneurial spirit. And I think that's where, even if you're in the corporate world and you're in the professional world, like I think being in sales is an awesome like place to be, to start out, kind of get your feet wet, because if you're really in
shout out my sales folks out there.
Yeah. Honestly, it really, because if you're an authentic and genuine person, as you're saying, then you can actually, you don't have to fit into that stereotype of like an inauthentic salesperson.
The used car salesman.
Yeah, that doesn't. That's so like, it's just such a small, narrow way of looking at like what sales could be. And I understand that people don't like to be sold to, but at the end of the day, people don't even know what they like until they see it. And so that's kind of like, you just have to like, if you're trying to build something and be authentic and you still have to like provide value and you have to sell it, then just like make it really good. And that's it.
Put your heart into it.
Mm-hmm. And it'll happen. It'll just kind of like unfold. So yeah, I was making really good money in cybersecurity sales. And then I was kind of like, I had one foot in the basketball and coaching world. And like, I would have conversations and moments with people like Weston where it would like, it flowed so much more naturally. And I was able to have so much more of an impact in those conversations than I could ever have on like a sales call for a tech company. And I realized like, okay, I'm exchanging a minute of my time with somebody who is actually going to take my interpretation of what I see that isn't even mine. I'm just like, I'm here, I showed up, I saw it, and they ask me and I share it with you. And then I see that that helps that person. And then they come back to me with like feedback. Hey, thank you for that, piece of advice. It actually changed how I looked at things. Honestly, I'm not perfect. I don't know everything at all. But when it comes to like movement and the human body and the anatomy of the human body and like even like what you could become, I've been thinking about this stuff since I was like 9, nonstop, every day. So like what I tell my clients is like, if you could just recognize that what you think your legs are is so different from what I think legs are, then we can start working together. Like we can start we can start to understand each other faster. And then what took me 20 years to learn, they could learn it in a day.
Crazy.
And so for me, I'm like, you asked me about the pivot. I had to like through hell or high water, I'm going to make this happen. Cause like, this is what I do.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
It's just like a natural click for you in terms of value add and the minutes you put in.
Exactly.
It feels more like you can provide more value in that sense because it's genuine and authentically you. And that sparks a interesting thing because
which also allows me to deepen my practice. Like my practice has deepened
100% because the stakes are higher.
Yes, so, and not just the time. I've committed to like compounding that time.
100%.
It's just like an investment. The compound interest is actually like orders of magnitude, or you can't even think about.
Yeah, and you know, I know you're big on mindset as well, and you know, what was that moment with? I guess with the basketball. You know, I know you say you didn't dunk until older in game, and I know you went through, for the listeners that don't know, and maybe you care to talk about it, is going through an injury and making it through an injury. And I know Jake also went through something similar with an injury as well.
What was your injury?
An Achilles rupture. But it's actually, that was like the third of a string of injuries on my left side. So I dislocated my left shoulder, then I tore my left hamstring, like a complete tear. And then these were all like a couple of years apart. And then
All playing ball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I tore my left Achilles. And so it kind of was like, honestly,
On one side?
all on one side.
Whoa.
Wow.
Yeah. So it gave me, I'm dunking with both hands.
Wow.
So and off of both leg and either leg. So it gave me this opportunity to like ask myself, am I going to look at the like perceived limitations and just be like, the doctors say my hips are like this. You know, my hips are twisted, rotated to the left. Well, can we unrotate it? Like the human body is designed very symmetrically. Like if the Fibonacci sequence exists in nature, the golden ratio, you can, however you want to look at it, has that fucking spindle thing. So you can see it in this fiddle leaf right here too. So everything has symmetry to it. Human beings, we are, we're societally and socially right or left-handed. But if you look at, we're the only primates that favor one side. You can actually train yourself. Yeah.
Like gorillas, that
They don't favor a side. Huh. Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think personally, my theory is that I have a lot of interesting theories around this.
Let's hear them all.
Yeah. But basically, one of them is that, like, as human beings, we are these like divine instruments, like supercomputer style aliens with superpowers. I know that sounds fucking far-fetched and way off, but like if you can't orient yourself to recognize that you can think, and when you think, you can think about more of those things that you're thinking about. Or then if you're like, I want to go buy a pair of shoes, and then you have those shoes on your feet, right? And then so you can basically organize your thoughts to put yourself in a vehicle to be wherever you want. But you can also organize your thoughts and get in your own way. And that's what most people do, which is why I'm so big on the mindset. Because I want to understand, where do I have delusions of grandeur? Where do I want to be the best in the world that I can be? And then where do I also think that I'm not worthy of that? Those are going to start to interplay with each other. And if I can work on my worthiness, then I'm going to be able to funnel myself into more of this, like what I could be. And then when I become what I could be, my ego is going to get in the way. Right. And so when the ego gets in the way, how do I handle myself when I fall down? So this is it's like a cycle.
So how does one improve worthiness? Because it's an interesting thing. I know a lot of people where the whole thing of their kind of self-development journey is like, they don't feel like they're enough, or they don't deserve.
That's the biggest thing.
They don't, exactly. They don't deserve wealth.
They don't think they're enough to even want the thing.
Right. Yeah. Like, who am I? Dude, I've seen it in people even like applying for jobs and stuff. They're like, well, oh boy, I mean, that job pays, I don't know, $100,000. Fuck, I don't know if I'm
and
worth
that's why I say we're these intergalactic beings with superpowers. Because if you allow yourself to say, hold on, I can do this.
Yeah.
Then you start to open up the possibilities of thought. I don't have a college degree. I worked in technology and I made multiple six figures. I told them I don't have a degree, but I have competency. I understand.
Yep.
I allowed myself to learn, knowing that I do not have credentials.
You knew you could pull it off.
It's not even I knew. I understood there's a finite amount of information. about what is the state of technology, how does business work,
Yeah.
how does the computer work,
And I can learn it.
how does information travel between these different systems, where are they storing the data, I can learn it.
Yep.
But I have to allow myself to realize that, which again, we're capable of it. All of us are, our brains are these supercomputers that, again, wherever we put our attention, we're going to attract more thoughts. And then when we attract our thoughts in that direction, we have these mental faculties. There's 6 of them. I learned this from Bob Proctor. Are you familiar with Bob Proctor?
I've heard of the name for sure.
He's got these 6 mental faculties on lock, but they're basically your perception, your will, your imagination, your memory, your intuition, and your reasoning capabilities. So if you actually understand that these are like your core processing, these are like core processing units of your mind, and that if you organize them all, so you organize your perception in the direction, so I start to perceive my reality as something that is going to work in my favor.
Right.
So my perception is locked in. If I start to use my imagination in the direction, is it my hands are just massive?
No, you said locked in.
Oh, yeah.
I love this chuckle every time.
Oh, yeah, locked in. I was probably texting one of my clients that like before I came here. That's that's a huge concept, right?
Yeah.
Because again, it's
Everyone
your
has to be
focus.
locked in.
Yeah, it's your focus.
Getlockedin.com.
Yeah, getlockedin.com. That's why I got the domain.
Well, all of these mental faculties actually require you to lock into them.
Yep.
Because we have our awareness. Exactly. You're welcome. Yeah. Yeah. But because you have your awareness, and awareness is actually all we have. So we have our awareness, and we can put our awareness through these mental faculties, which are always running. Your imagination is always running, but are you imagining the best case scenario or worst case scenario, right? Or is your imagination just weak?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Jim.
I was going to say, do you think, so the 6, these 6 pillars you're talking about, do you think that people, well, obviously people have ones that are stronger than others. Have you met people that are strong at all? Because I know people with incredible intuition that have the worst reasoning I've ever seen ever, but their intuition's incredible. Do you think you can develop great?
You can develop all of them. Yeah. The awareness of the fact that they exist.
Yeah.
And then your ability to understand how yours is functioning.
Right.
So for me, for example, what
are your best pillars?
I studied them. So what I do, and I have it memorized, and I've teach it, right? But what I do, I still have to remind myself of the functionality to galvanize my own mind, so that I can continue to move in the direction that I want to move in, as well as not, like, again, the ego is just like always there. So if I have a really great, let's say we have a great session here, and then I'm like, oh my God, that was awesome. I was flowing. Everything that I was saying felt succinct. And then I go home and I'm like, I tell my girlfriend, like, that was awesome. Like, I'm the shit. Then automatically tomorrow I'm not going to wake up with the same hunger to continue my journey.
But that's super interesting. So, but how do you then take wins and let it add to your confidence without it becoming
Wins are inevitable. A win is inevitable. If you're locked in and you're honest with yourself, you're gonna accumulate wins, and you have to learn how to win, like, kind of with humility.
With humility, right? Yeah.
And not like, actually, in my past, I learned this the hard way. All this stuff I share with everybody, like, honestly, I think I like to share messages that are cohesive. I like to share things that are really, like, helpful, but I'm not perfect. So I learned all this stuff the hard way. I had wins in my 20s when I was playing professional basketball that were so fun, so exciting, that I did not practice and train the way that I should have for months after. And so then I had to pay for that with who I wasn't, if that makes sense. So
it's almost like if you're I guess my mind just went to that, 20-year-old or 18-year-old person who wins big, maybe in crypto or maybe in business, and then they're not as hungry, and they kind of walk around for the rest of their life with an ego and kind of don't maximize the amount of value.
Anytime you're like, I used to do anything, you're fucked.
Yeah, you're done already.
Yeah, if you tell anyone about what you did, you're already in the wrong headspace.
And it's interesting you said about the thoughts as well, because one thing that I've seen, I don't know the exact percentage, but I know it's a lot. Like 80% of people's thoughts are negative on average. Like
Totally.
I'm not saying that's you. I'm not saying that's Jake or me, but I'm saying it happens.
They are. And what we do, like even
But how do you handle that?
you have to have like a prescription, and it has to be practiced on repeat. And then when it's practiced on repeat consistently and devotedly, then the skill becomes like kind of very amazing. It looks super amazing, but it's not. It's just from the consistency. So like even on the way here, I was like, okay, I ask God and my creator source to like purify my intention and allow me to be like aligned with myself so that whenever we're talking, I'm able to flow. So I'm thinking about this stuff. Whenever I work with a lot of kids, I coach a lot of kids, I coach a lot of guys in their 20s, I coach a lot of men in their 30s. I'm always asking, God, I'm asking my creator, I'm asking source to align me with, just like the light. Because at the end of the day, what we're doing whenever we put our attention on something is we're drawing in energy. And so I'll give you an example. You said you play tennis, right?
Mm-hmm.
What hand do you use?
Right-handed.
So do you ever play with your left hand?
I have for fun.
And you have for fun.
Yeah.
Right. So when you played with your left, did you not have to like exercise your imagination a little bit more?
A lot more.
So what are you doing?
Everything is much more deliberate and intentional.
So you're drawing from source. You're a funnel. And you're pulling in from source because you have to teach yourself. You don't have that functionality on your non-dominant side. Going back to what we were talking about, I wanted to dive into that.
Yeah.
Because I actually teach all my clients, especially when they're younger, to be ambidextrous.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and there's
That's awesome.
Yeah, because
I brush my teeth with the left hand in the morning.
It's good.
Yeah. I just saw apparently it activates like a different part of your brain. Whether
Absolutely.
it does that, I don't know. But like I kind of
100%
manipulate myself that it works.
Is your breath stinkier on those days?
No, actually, I've done it for like 3 years to the point where I'm honestly like arguably better now with my left.
I'm sure. Yeah, you have you're more inclined to use your left hand, but that's the point. Is like you're you're drawing in. Where are you pulling that from? You're pulling it from somewhere. No, people don't think about this. They take it for granted. That's why I said at the beginning we are these like superhuman entities. We have to realize that it's not some far-fetched thing.
So tell me a bit more about, because I mean, it's pretty crazy that you don't meet a lot of people that played pro basketball. That's pretty sick. So you played for, you said 6 years. How'd that start off? You were in Austin. Did you play in college and then go over there, or?
Yeah, I walked on at my university team and then just like made Texas State University.
Okay.
And then made the practice squad. And that was basically enough for me. I'm Lebanese. I was born in Lebanon, so I have a Lebanese passport.
Okay.
So that kind of, if you're a Lebanese American player that plays NCAA basketball and you have aspirations to go play professionally, which the Lebanese league, when I was growing up and even now, is like a really, it's like a prestigious, like highly sought after and like highly televised. It looks good, right? It's like, it was very attractive to me when I was a kid. So I was like, oh, I want to go play basketball in Lebanon. And I used to tell my dad that, and that would like, I would kind of get, when you want to get a pulse or like a read from your parents on whether they're going to like support your path or not.
Yeah.
And like my dad was super supportive of me being like, I was very like, I guess, intellectually driven kid. So he was supportive of that. But whenever I told him I wanted to play basketball in Lebanon, he was excited about that because of his like nationalism and his pride for Lebanon. So when I saw that he was like cool with it, that actually gave me a lot more excitement. So I started getting in touch with agents when I was 18. And then, they would like tell me to send them film, and I ended up becoming very close to, I'm still like really good friends with my agent to this day, with like one of the top agents in the Middle East. And he still like works with a bunch of different NBA players, and he lives in Las Vegas now. So he brought me to Lebanon, and he like took really good care of me, putting me on different, getting me tryouts and workouts with different teams. And I wasn't really ready to play professional basketball.
In what sense?
Physically, mentally, like I think I was really hungry, and I had a lot of heart, and I was like I was a good shooter.
Right.
So that gave me like, that allowed me the presence to be on the court, But I really learned a lot just being in Lebanon, playing at that really high. And I had been exposed to like high level Division I basketball players in the States, but something about the way that they played over in Lebanon really like challenged me. The skill level was so much higher because they get all their skills from like European basketball. I was so like going into movement and functionality and being ambidextrous, like they pushed me to really like learn about my body, and I was so clumsy in my 20s.
Interesting.
So
oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, well, so how does the training differ for folks that learn to play basketball in the States, for example, versus in Europe? Like, is it fundamentally different? Because I know in tennis, for example, it was different. Like, you play only on hard court here. It's a much faster paced game. You go for big shots typically, whereas, you know, in Europe, they're training on clay, insane footwork, all about consistency, having that kind of grit in every single point. How about for basketball?
I think it's the same. It's the exact same as what you're describing. The conditions are not as ideal.
Yeah.
But it makes the players are a lot. It's almost like you can see the way someone moves in a sport, like how dynamic it is. It tells you a lot about like how their brain circuitry is, like what's going on with like the circuitry of their mind. And I see like the European style players have a lot more going on. Like they have a lot more of like the skill,
A lot more moves,
and then the grit and that toughness. They're just like tough as nails.
Yeah.
And so I think I learned that just by getting thrown around like a rag doll. You know what I mean? So I was like, okay. And I one thing was like that I always had was I'll always stand back up. Like I get knocked down, stand back up. I was just like,
Never quit.
Yeah, never quit. So you start learning a thing or two at some point, even if you are like, I was chronically immobile, inflexible, contact averse. Like now I love making contact. I love like just hitting.
Roughing it up a little bit.
But I was so scared of contact, so scared of getting hurt, and it reflected itself in how I played, and it reflected itself in like how much I got injured. Whereas when I totally flipped the switch, I get injured less through being more physical.
That's crazy.
Because again, it's you're being that force rather than being impeded on.
Yeah.
And it makes a big difference. And in life, you have to be the one to, like, obviously you want to build yourself up so that you can attract things to you and that you can put yourself on a trajectory to align yourself. And like for me, let's say I'm like listening to a meditation on like, I'm going to benefit from that meditation. I was thinking about this today actually, because I'm sure you've seen, I do these like single leg squats.
Yeah, I've seen the videos, right?
Right.
Pistol squat.
Yeah,
type?
pistols. But I like prime. The way I build up to it is I actually put my leg on an elevated platform and I just hold my leg there. But okay, I'll hold my leg up there for like 2, 3, 10 minutes at a time sometimes. But the quality of that time is so important. So if I just put my leg up there for 2 minutes and I'm passive in comparison to like putting my leg up there and just like pressing consciously for 2 minutes, the value of those 2 minutes, if you're consciously pressing, is so much more valuable than the 2 minutes of just being there.
So this is really interesting because I started getting into a lot of mobility stuff for a back injury I had. And I learned this exact thing about stretching. You can stretch very passively and just sort of hang out in a stretch position, and but the flexibility gains start to get really unlocked when you actually essentially activate your muscle while you're doing it.
100%.
Right? As opposed to just sort of cranking on the muscle in the stretch position.
Not pulling. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
Like you're creating this. It's literally, I've done it so much that the feeling is indistinguishable from any other feeling, but it's like you're elastic.
Right.
So I would almost like trust if I were to like hit a wall, I'm okay.
Yeah.
Because like you're just like,
you're not gonna, like,
you're
shatter.
fusing yourself with just like you're squeezing, like stretching and squeezing. You know what I mean? It's just like you're building that tension and that activation. And then with the thing that most people leave on the table and it like drives me crazy is like breathing. Most people don't breathe and they don't have a pattern of breathing for their training. So I see people in the gym and just like, so it's like you're just fundamentally what you're doing is you're creating stress and you're holding it.
Right.
Versus
and tension. Yeah.
I'm moving the energy in my body. So then now I have a better communication system. I'm more likely to be able to be like, are you familiar with proprioception?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So like if you throw a tennis ball over here, I could, go reach and go get it, or over here, I could reach and go get it.
So that breathing is kind of like almost tennis players and even fighters, boxers.
Mm-hmm.
People wonder like why they make so much noise every time they're throwing a punch or swinging. It's like that's actually breathing.
You need it. Yeah.
Like if you're hearing them not making noise, they're probably doing what you're saying, right? Really tense and holding it, and that's how you gas out super quick.
100%. Right? Yeah. Power. You unlock your power with the breath, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. One thing that interests me about that is you mentioned I play basketball myself, and I am totally guilty of being that guy that avoids contact too. And like I go to the gym, I work out, I I work out consistently. So, but I always found that I had those same problems with, just doing those conventional exercises. One thing I found intriguing, always seeing you in the gym, you always kind of did routines that aren't necessarily common. And going back to like unlocking that, how has that been like helping you in what way unlock that like contact aspect of what, you said with the basketball? Cause like, I find that I have that same mental thing of like, not that I'm like scared of contact, but I don't it's not that I look for it either. I'm more like I get hit and like it hurts.
Well,
like
your body is telling you something. It's your body telling you, hey, I don't feel safe attacking or making contact, so I'm going to actually hold you back. You know what I mean? So when this sounds like super philosophical and like esoteric, but like whenever I'm like warmed up and I'm doing some dunks, I actually don't plan like what type of dunk I want to do. I can actually just feel it. I can my body is telling me what to do. And so when going back to your question about like contact, when you have enough body awareness and you kind of like download your own self in your body through, the only way I found that you can do it is like stretching, or even like you can do it through weightlifting, but you have to have that mindfulness of like inhaling and exhaling with every single rep. Because when you inhale and exhale with the rep, if you're holding your breath, you're blocking your own awareness for your perceptive nature. You have a perception, right, which is one of your mental faculties. You can perceive what's going on inside of you. If you breathe and you start to bring your awareness in here, okay, maybe the first couple times it's like, that seems a little bit weird.
So that mind to muscle connection is key.
My muscle connection is key. When you build it, you start to develop sight, the quality of sight inside your body.
Right.
So you can see with your body.
Wow.
So moving on the court, making contact with someone, I know I don't even mind like not brushing shoulders, sticking into you, even if like I used to bench like 3 plates. That didn't give me the confidence or the ability to make contact until I started working on my mobility, and then combining that with the flexibility and the strength that we were talking about, which is like because that's when you become elastic. And the idea is that your whole body is one. It's one unit. When Bruce Lee did his 1-inch punch, he's using he's gripping the ground, transferring the power up through his hips so that he could in that one moment. So it's you have to actually kind of bend and flex, like all the joints. This sounds like tedious, but if you do it over,
makes sense.
Over
it's
a
like
longer period of time, it will unlock your body. Then you have that, when they say when your chakras are aligned, right? It's just the energy that is constantly circulating through all of us now has an open gate. So now, because basically your body, the concept is like, I'm sure we've all heard your body you can heal yourself of anything.
Yeah.
How? The way you heal yourself of anything is you dissolve the blockage. How do you dissolve the blockage? You find the blockage. When you find the blockage, what do you do? So that's what I've learned how to do is like when my Achilles, any injury I've found, those were all my lessons to teach me how to overcome them, how to actually like feel what's going on in here, breathe into it, and work with it, work through it, and make it strong. and understand why did it happen in the first place. If you show up with that intention, I promise it happens with everybody I work with. Your body will start to tell you what to do next. So then you just keep listening and you have to trust. And you know this because you used to watch me train. You have to be okay looking dumb. If you're okay looking stupid and knowing that you don't even look stupid, but you have to be okay with the concept.
You just look different because most people aren't doing
It's not even
like
that. You just have to be okay with the concept of looking different. That's what most people aren't okay with that. Most people are not okay not fitting in because we have a part of our brains that's like,
we need to fit in with the
well,
tribe.
I have to fit in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So once, that's why it's a lot. I talk a lot, but it's like you have to, when you lock all of these things in, right? It does something. It clicks. It clicks for, these aren't my ideas. I learned these concepts. I applied these concepts and they worked. And if I don't do them, I start to fall on the other side of the benchmark.
So like as a tactical thing, for example, you said you hurt your hamstring. So how'd you heal that? Like, what did that actually look like in terms of, you're talking about the mind-body connection. What did you actually put into practice day after day to heal an injury like that?
So that, like, literally, it's obviously time.
Yeah.
But to be a little bit more specific, when you have an injury, you have to understand that the injury was like your chink in the armor. Like where you have that injury was, it has now become a chink in the armor, and the body, which wants to be harmonious, wants to be symmetrical, is now compromised.
Right.
So
that's why it leads to other injuries too.
And that's why it does lead to a chain of other injuries. But what you want to do is get ahead of that. And so the way you get ahead of that is you ask yourself, first and foremost, spirit, the energy of spirit is like the most powerful and potent energy on the planet. And so when that's why like people with like a lot of energy, they get shit done. You can even see it in them, right? It's because they're just energized. They're using themselves, right? They're not dull and dead and disconnected. So when I had this chain of injuries on my left side, I actually realized the left side of my body, when it comes to like it wasn't being used to its design. It was designed to be like to bend and to like flex completely. And if you don't have the ability to like do that, then it will weaken.
Yep.
And then if it weakens, your body starts to kind of shorten.
And your right side did have that ability up to that point?
No, because basically it's not that it had the ability. It's that I was playing basketball. I was working out. So I was testing my body.
3 plates is crazy. So,
but yeah, it is. But that type of strength, you can build a lot of. You can get gains for years that are simultaneously fucking you up. Right. And I think most people do that.
I often say I don't want to bench over 2 plates for that reason, because I don't see a reason why to bench 3 plates. Like
everybody has that effect,
like it's
right?
kind of diminishing returns after that. But
exactly.
Like, that's just, that's always been kind of the minority. Most bros are like, yo, I want to bench 3 plates, or I want to bench as much as I can.
Because the ego is so big.
Yeah.
But it's going to mess you up. So I was able to maybe hold weight, not move in full range of motion. Now I can put 2 plates on my back and go all the way down, touch like literally all the way down, and come all the way up.
In a squat
with the weight on my back. That's integrity. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, when the way I healed my body was I realized, first of all, you can look at like the greats in any sport. They all have like this beautiful functionality in their body. Their bodies move really well.
Yeah,
They move. So why can't my body move well? So then I'm like, okay, well, it's not moving well, but I can. So again, it goes back to, is it possible for me? Most people think it's not possible for me. So I accepted that I am designed in like this, I'm designed perfectly. We're all designed in perfection, unless like we're literally given like as part of our purpose or life experience here, like a limitation where you don't have an arm or a leg, or you're missing. And even people in those situations like can do amazing things, right? And that's, again, goes back to the spirit. But I have all this. I have all my legs. I have both my legs, both my hands, both my arms. But I was constantly in pain. I couldn't, like, I was not flexible. and then I kept getting hurt. But I never told myself maybe like it's because of my lack of functionality.
Well, and when you were going back to your injury, this was a crazy thing. So I had a disc herniation in my low back, and it took me a super long time to actually realize that the disc herniation was actually not the injury.
Mm-hmm.
It was a byproduct of weakness and tightness.
A lack of full function.
Correct. And that the result of that was the disc slip.
Exactly.
So to say. But
well, because of lifestyle too.
Yeah.
So like the only way I'm able to consistently improve in my functionality, my athleticism, and my dunking and my training is that I wake up every day, and whenever I do my training, I'm like getting into my body and getting more aligned. From the aligning because of misalignment, which is life.
Yeah.
And I have these modes and vectors and movements that help me, that I found that definitely align me. And if I don't do them, I will definitely start to feel disconnected and move towards injury.
Right.
And if I do them, then I move towards alignment and harmony.
Yep.
And so
it's about consistency.
Because we're constantly in a perpetual like life cycle. Like everything is moving, nothing is still.
So it seems like mobility and flexibility is a huge piece, which for you was maybe missing for a while, and then when you started to bring it in, it changed a lot of things for you. So what did that look like when you went from like, I'm not flexible, my mobility sucks, to obviously where you're at today? Like what did that routine look like for you?
And
not that you can show it here, but I mean, was it just static stretching?
The thing is that your body, because going back to what you were talking about making contact on the court, like you won't let yourself do more than you're comfortable doing. So you won't even let yourself understand more than you're capable of understanding. So I did yoga for years, like maybe 10 years. I've been doing yoga for 10 years.
Worth it?
Yeah, absolutely. So because again, it gave me a body of knowledge, doing it consistently. Now I have a framework about that. That's a movement practice. That's an energy and alignment practice. That's a mental alignment practice. That's a mental toughness practice. That's a balance, stability, and it has all these strength components as well. Bringing that into basketball, bringing that into movement, bringing that into human life is a different situation. But it took I don't want to digress, because it took me like doing yoga. I was so stiff. I was more stiff than most people. Like most of my clients, for example, they can get to points that took me years to get in months. Because of just like, I can help shorten that gap now because of like, I can even see what people are thinking, what's holding them back.
The compounded knowledge
right,
is there.
Yeah, and then removing any doubt or limitation, because that's also a creeping voice in the back of people's heads, right?
And especially for flexibility, even personally, I know I've had a belief for a long time where it's like, I'm not a flexible dude.
Exactly. So that's the point.
It makes it hard to
self-fulfilling prophecy.
So that's what made it hard. So that's why it took me. There you go. It took me like maybe 100 sessions of yoga to even understand what yoga was. Yeah. And maybe then I'm like, oh, I still keep figuring out what it is, because humans like are constantly forgetting. We're like remembering. Like think about like a time you had like an epiphany or you learned something awesome. You don't remember all the details of that.
No.
So you have to continue to kind of like remind yourself. But if you kept showing up, you would keep awe. You would restore your awe, your fascination. And when you restore your fascination, it's like imagining you climb to the top of a mountain, let's say like the Chief, right? And then it's like you take it in, but because you've been there before, you can actually see more than you saw last time.
Right.
It almost goes back to that consistency aspect where the more you do it, it pretty much tells your brain that this is important. Let's delve more into this.
And it also, you create you open the vessel. You are a container. So you're opening your vessel to store information, and not only store, like we're so quantum in our communication, and science has already proven this, that you're not just opening yourself up to learn, you're opening yourself up to align with those concepts to then share those concepts on that vibration. Do you see what I'm saying? So you become one with that vibration. And if you're so dedicated to it, like with this company, okay, if you're so dedicated to this company,
you got to be, it's locked in.
You have, if you're, the more locked in you are, right? And the more you realize that you're capable of achieving anything you want and helping, let's say you want to help millions of people, right? Let's say you want to help 1 billion people, then that is going to start to, the more honest you are with that conviction and that commitment, it's going to put your idea, it's going to open your vessel up and then put you on that frequency to align with that, to make it happen. Things are going to move around in your environment to pull that in, to make that a reality. But if you don't allow yourself to be great, you won't.
That's so interesting because it's almost, you have to put yourself in that position where, like, on a frequency level that's so high where people that are on that same frequency or, you know, can add to that goal of yours, they're going to seek you out, or you're going to
It'll just happen. They'll show up.
And that's
it comes from the authenticity.
That's so interesting because I think, like, a lot of, you know, my past successes and also failures are to do with that, you know, setting a goal and looking at it like, this is what I want. And if I want it that bad, I always get it because I never quit. And just like believing in it so hard. And that goes back to, you know, path. But it's interesting you mentioned authenticity because they were actually, and I'm sure you've seen this before, but they were actually able to measure the frequency of people because, you know, I know there's a whole audience of people, and I'm sure you've dealt with them, that are a little skeptical about all this stuff, but they were actually able to prove scientifically that measure the frequency of people, and the highest frequency by like a vast margin is authenticity. And, you know, for somebody that, you know, wants to unlock that, what's your hack, so to speak? Obviously it's individual, but I guess for your sake,
I could teach anybody how to tap into that. Like that's something I'm super confident in because it's not, we're not different. We're all the same. We're all exactly the same. Yeah.
Like vibration wise,
like human beings are consistent of the same functionality, the same, like, you know, the limitations are like our perceived limitations are imagined.
Right.
So
you're the almost.
But what would you say to somebody who said, for example, in your area of expertise in something like dunking, there are definitely people that could dunk, but it's because of a perceived limitation 100%. That they can't. But there's also people that can't dunk.
No, there's not. Spud Webb is 5'7". Shout out to Spud Webb, 1985 dunk champion, 5'7". Watch the videos of him dunking, wild. And you'll understand he is somebody who has mastered the laws of physics in this reality. Not because he's special. He is special. He recognized how special he was.
Right.
And he allowed himself to open himself up to that. Watch the dunks in slow motion. There's nothing that is defying physics other than him knowing how to orchestrate himself, knowing how to orient himself.
But you don't think that's just a 1 in a billion freak athlete?
No. I know for myself because I was the athlete that everyone told to quit because of how bad I was. And I also have worked, again, like in the last 2 years since I've been doing, you know, this coaching full time, I've worked with probably like 100 people. And like, again, the formula is the same. I use my intuition to get an understanding of exactly what level of consciousness someone is functioning on. Okay, and I say we're all the same because human beings, if you pop out in a culture, you're not going to speak Chinese if you grow up in Canada, unless you grow up in a Mandarin or a Cantonese household. Right. So why? You speak English because school is in English, TV is in English. So you're consuming ideas, and you're assimilating these ideas. And you, as this high speed supercomputer that's vibrating at billions of bits per second, is computing everything.
Right.
So I can understand where someone's computing and help because I understand how your senses, we have 5 senses, they pull in data from our world. Because our consciousness has so much processing power, our conscious mind and our subconscious mind our conscious mind is like a small funnel and feeds into this like infinite intelligence, which is our subconscious mind, which we're all infinitely connected to, which is why humans can learn languages, learn ideas, and then develop those ideas. That's the subconscious realm. Us as conscious entities are funneling and pulling in this data.
So how much do you see the issue being limited belief?
That's all it is. That's why I do what I do.
Okay.
It's only limiting. So you have to figure out that if you have a limiting belief, where it is, and that you can override it.
I find that very interesting because, I am open. You've definitely opened my mind to a lot of these ideas. And another person that I had on this podcast a little bit ago, his name, I'm sure you know him, Eon. He had an injury in his, I think he was born without an Achilles tendon in his foot. And the guy's running marathons and they said he'd never walk again. He didn't let that, opinion even change what he could do. In my own life, I guess I can extrapolate that. I've had people tell me that I would never graduate high school, and here I am. I have friends who, were told some things from others that they couldn't do something. And almost if the only one that I always fall back on, the only one that can really tell you can't do something is yourself. 100%. So I guess if I look at those people and look what they accomplished, not tooting my own horn by any means, there's a lot more fascinating people that have made it through a lot more trials and tribulations than I've had. And shout out to Eon Popov. Great story, by the way. It's incredible. He also has a company now. He's teaching people how to be optimal now. And, I'm not going to say when he was younger, people were telling him, hey, you're not optimal and you're never going to be optimal. And now he runs a company called Optimum Ability. Pretty insane. So definitely opened my eyes to it. And I guess, for someone who's, maybe have been told they can't do something or maybe themselves, how can they, I guess, get to the state where they can have this mindset that they can do anything?
We have to realize that the idea that we can't do something is also something that we learned.
Right.
So honestly, it becomes prerequisite knowledge is so key, because if you don't have prerequisite knowledge about something, like who you are as a human being and how you function as a human being and how you even develop your sense of self and then how you make decisions, 99% of people have no clue how this happens, and they're just moving arbitrarily about the world, trying to obtain nuggets of information so that those nuggets can help them, because they don't actually know who they are. Right. They don't actually know that their limitations are based on the paradigm that they've adopted. So unless you come from a household of high performers that are consciously competent, that know how to be a high performer. So basically they have to be hey, we don't say any limiting beliefs. Yeah. Exactly. We don't put people down. We uplift, we value hard work. We don't have a mindset of lack and limitation. We give charity. We basically align, unless you grow up in a household like this, which sounds pretty cool.
Yeah.
And picturesque, right?
Rare though.
Very rare. I didn't grow up in that type of household. Yeah. Then you're growing up in an environment where you're hearing a lot of don't go there, don't touch that, don't do that. Taxes fucked, all that you get is all women are the same. I'm just saying things I've heard. I'm sure we've all heard that, right? Yeah. If that's what you grew up hearing.
I have a fear of taxes just because my dad talks about it all the time. So I agree with you.
All men are the same, by the way. No, same thing, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, so those ideas are in you.
Right.
Holding space in this vessel that we talked about. And so that is clogging, is blocking you from who you really are. And who you really are is, look, man, we don't know when our lives are going to end. None of us, right?
Some people claim they do, but I don't think so.
Right. But you don't know I don't follow any of that stuff with the numerology and all that stuff, right? Yeah. But basically, we have so much potential Our minds are so powerful that we created our own limiting beliefs based on what we heard. We created our own belief system about what we could do and then became it. So your reality is so precise. It's exactly what you think. And if you become aware of the fact that everything that you've thought has made up your reality because your consciousness won't allow you. So I was talking about this 5 senses. I wish I had a diagram here because I need a diagram for it to really stick. This is the prerequisites information that as human beings, we pop out in this world between the age of 0 and 7. Our subconscious mind is wide open to all of the information that our parents and cultures and school and limiting beliefs, positive beliefs, all that stuff. We just take it all in. And then at 7, our consciousness forms. We start to develop, we start to navigate the world with our 5 senses. So what we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell. And everything we see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, for the most part, like 95%, will affirm our subconscious conditioning. So that's why if a child grows up in a racist household, let's say, for example, I grew up in Texas around a lot of white kids. I grew up, those white kids probably had some racist parents that were talking about some racist ideas. So then those kids are going to have racist ideas and they're going to come to school and be like, hey, my dad said, whatever. So that kid learned that. Yeah. And now it's a part of how he or she is functioning. So those ideas, again, you're using your senses to affirm, but then you also have those mental faculties that are always in motion. So the mental faculties are how you can actually rewire your conditioning to open your mind, to realize that you are a vessel of pure awareness, that wherever you put your awareness on, you'll start to attract, not even attract, that sounds too mystical. Wherever you put your awareness on, neurons will start to fire in your brain that will activate other neurons that fire. It's just like you do a few sets of, curls or, bench. You do one set, second set, you're ready. Third set, you're fucking like, you're throwing that bitch around.
Yeah, yeah.
Excuse my language. I cuss a lot. That's the point. And so, but even more prerequisite that we need to understand is nobody's better than anybody else. If somebody on this planet, because of how we're designed, can achieve something, then you're capable of achieving it too. Yeah. Once you allow yourself to open yourself to that possibility, you begin to open your mind to receive and interpret more data that is already there to support you. If you tell yourself you can't, or your friends tell you can't, and you believe them, or you get mad at them, or you say, I want to show them, and you're not doing it for you're limited. You become limited in what you could perceive. So you go ask about authenticity. That's why you have to remain authentic to yourself.
But one thing that I find super interesting in what you said is like from 0 to 7, you're kind of wide open. And then from, I believe it was 7 to 10, or maybe I got the age wrong, but it's after that, it's kind of external where a lot of people, have a lot of influence. My dad, one quote that he says, and I believe it to be true, a big reason why I think I got a lot of value coming to Vancouver is you're the average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And I'm curious to know, like, obviously we know that's important. We know, who you surround yourself with is important in terms of who you become, but how important actually is it from your perspective, from the people you're around or from yourself? And then if someone that's around bad people, like, do you actually, like, I know I've been in situations where everyone tells me one thing and I go do the other. So I've had those scenarios where, like, I believe in something so damn hard where I'll do it regardless if all my friends, close people tell me not to, if I believe it's right in my heart. But how much control do you find people have for themselves other than, being influenced by just who you're around? Because you mentioned that after that, a lot of the influence comes from who you're around.
Oh yeah, so like teenagers don't have the ability to think for themselves unless they are encouraged to, because the conditioning or the urge to be accepted and not be made fun of is so high that they want to conform at all costs. So what is good is what is everyone else doing. That's the teenage years.
Right. But for those people that, you hear about it like, oh, they grew up in my dad's a big believer in the people that had that hard upbringing, that had a lot of negative influences, and they end up being the most successful people of all time. Like a lot of the most successful people we know today have had, a lot of stories that are pretty grim and a lot of influences that are very grim.
Well, yeah, like
so how do they differ from
it builds? So timing is a critical component here, because the wrong environment can be toxic. Like, let me first answer your earlier question. If, like, let's say you're purpose-driven, mission-oriented, you're trying to be positive, you want to make something for yourself, and you have one of your friends, you love that friend, but they're always negative, and they don't think that they can like make things happen for themselves, or that the world is always against them or you, right? That friend is an anchor for you. It inevitably that person is holding you down. But to answer your question about the second part of your question around how does adversity or toxic environments, how does that facilitate someone's like greatness? That's a different question, because you can fall down, and because you fell down, if you're someone who wants to stand back up, you learn from those experiences, and then the learning and the value of what you learn from that experience helps to where, for example, you now have boundaries.
right?
You don't tolerate that anymore.
It's how you interpret it.
Exactly, it's how you interpret it. So now, because of what you went through, because you tried your best to be positive, and you learned that this negative friend is still holding you down, and they brought you down, that was bad. That was painful. But then you learned from that, and now you don't tolerate that. So that's why we all go through hardships, but like, we have to just like have a North Star, because that's actually going to be the thing that pulls us forward.
So sometimes it can almost be like it can be an accelerator.
It is an accelerator if you let it be.
So it all comes down to you.
Your perception.
Awesome.
And which is one of the mental faculties. So it's like your perception. How are you perceiving what's happening to you? Mm-hmm. Another one that I think you guys are going to find really interesting is reason. You mentioned one of your friends doesn't have the reasoning faculty. Well, there's two components to reasoning. There's inductive and deductive reasoning.
Right, I've heard
this. Yeah.
Okay, so deductive reasoning is like your subconscious. So you're deductive to your environment. So if everyone's like, let's say they're like, there's a lot of there's like a common narrative around like Donald. I don't actually follow politics, so I'm just thinking out loud here. But like, people all tend to say like the same thing about Donald Trump.
Yeah, sure.
So that if I don't know anything about Donald Trump, and then I hear people talking about him and the way that they think about him, I'm going to automatically be deductive to that if I'm not aware. So it's like, oh, I hear that he's a bad guy or he's a good guy. So now I'm deductive to whatever you think.
Yeah.
Whatever you. So that's deductive reasoning. So you're not thinking for yourself, but your brain is just wide open.
Yeah.
Inductive reasoning is where you're choosing to filter the thoughts and think for yourself. So you guys are saying like, oh, Donald Trump is X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, well, hold on. Why do you say that?
Right.
So that's the ability to ask that question and start to delve in that direction. Mm-hmm. You're activating your reasoning faculty, which can penetrate, it can pierce ignorance.
Right. Yeah.
Having that open mind is pivotal. One thing that I'm diving into, which is really cool, you mentioned back, and I know you had a back issue. They said that a lot of it can actually be diet. So you mentioned mind-body connection. How much in your own life have you felt like what you eat also puts a thing in? Because I'm huge into diet and fasting and nutrition. So how much do you find that
at my level, it makes a world of a difference. Like it is the ultimate, like, it's like that, I'd say you say supplements are like that 5%. It's like, because I'm training every single day, I'm coaching every day, I'm moving every single day. If the quality of like fuel that I'm putting in isn't optimal, then I'm not going to be optimal.
Yeah. What is your diet, out of curiosity?
It's pretty comprehensive.
In a broad strokes.
Just because I have to eat so much, right?
Yeah.
Like,
especially being 6'2".
Mm-hmm, yeah, and then like I'm an explosive athlete, so just I burn so many calories. I eat mainly like just high quality meats, a lot of eggs, a lot of like yogurt, a lot of fruits, bananas, honey.
Yep. Whole foods.
Yeah, just like a ton of whole foods,
Yeah.
just like as much as possible.
Yep.
Yeah, cool. Well, you mentioned one thing that I found really interesting about this entire conversation is you mentioned that you do teach this to a lot of different people. Like you said, 100 plus. I wanted to kind of get a sense of where do you see that going? Like, what's your goals with that? Because you already teach to 100 plus, and I guess where do you see this mind body Dunk Masters connection? Energies thing that you're doing in the next little while, because it's definitely getting. I'll say this: like these ideas and what we've talked about on this podcast. 5 years ago, I was in school and I said that nootropics and brain enhancers and supplements are going to be a multi-billion-dollar industry, and that's not why I went into it for the money. I went in it for the passion, but definitely these type of ideas and these type of opportunities and industries are really opening up now. So, you are doing this at a very pivotal time, and a lot of people are open to these ideas. So where do you see it going?
Well, I think like one of my missions is to, aside from my personal goal of like consistently, I have an intention that I set for myself to constantly align myself towards my highest potential and unfolding in that direction. And I want it to be good. I don't want my highest potential to be something that is like not good for myself and others. So with doing that, I'd like to help as many people as possible to do that. I realize with how powerful the mind is that if you don't set a goal worthy of you, then you'll reach for something lower than you're worth. So right now, my goal is to help over like millions of people. I want to help millions of people become aware of what they're capable of, become aware of their real potential, and then kind of develop the tools to align themselves towards that. Whether honestly, it's like I find myself moving in the direction of like mental and spiritual, emotional, physical alignment because of how important it is in this like misaligned and chaotic society.
Yeah.
We're
Huge
still human
opportunity.
beings. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, and I was going to say, especially when there's so much focus, there is frankly a lot of focus like on the physical, right? And but I think there is a big gap that a lot of people don't think about, which is the mental, is the emotional,
And
is
they're
the spiritual.
directly connected
Body too.
The connection is it's there. So if you ignore the connection, then you're leaving everything on the table.
Yeah.
So that's the thing, is when you embody yourself with what you're doing. Like, again, I think my confidence is a lot higher in talking about this stuff, and my conviction is because I've seen it firsthand with, I work with teenagers, like a lot of 14, 15-year-olds.
Yep.
I work with people in their 20s and in their 30s, and I see how the teenagers learn it. And I see how the different age groups process this information, but everybody is getting it. Everybody gets it because it's human.
Yeah.
It's real.
Yeah.
It's
Well, and with yourself as well.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. And I love, being someone to being able to demonstrate.
Yeah.
And then also kind of help someone else awaken that inside of them. That's when the synergy is just there. And like, I don't really know where it'll lead, but I do know that I want to keep,
This is where you are. This is where the vibrations are really
yeah.
clicking.
Yeah.
Interesting. Well, I think that is something that a lot of people can get behind. And I think a lot of people, I know before I met you, I often say that there's 5 traits to a person. First is character. That's the most important in my eyes. 2 is health. I think if you don't have health, you don't have anything. 3rd thing is wealth. I think money is important. You got to take care of your family and the people you care about. Number 4, I put is relationships. I think that is, your friends, family, etc. And number 5, and this is my 5th pillar, and I oftentimes have the hardest time tapping into it, but ever since meeting you, I've definitely, opened doors to this, so to speak, to, go back to what we were talking about earlier, is spirituality. And, I'm not just talking about religion or anything, I'm talking about the whole like mind, body, connection. So I find it so interesting. I think a lot of people also have a lot of those same things, but like same problems.
I'd love to distill something that I've interpreted on this, right? Because it becomes such a sticky concept that people avoid it, and they avoid the potential that comes from it, right?
100%.
So regardless of like what your spiritual beliefs are, I think we can all agree that like we all have a mind, we all have a physical body, and then we all have like a sense of self and our awareness. Well, that sense of self and our awareness, that's actually our spirit. So we're tapped in. That awareness is actually drawn in. It's connected to another realm.
Right.
That's the spirit realm. That's where all of us are kind of. I'm trying not to sound so like woo-woo and hokey pokey about it, but it's more about, you know how like when was your first like earliest memory?
Ooh.
Probably, like, you know, fighting with my little brothers.
Okay, who were you then?
I was a kid. I was a little kid.
You were a little kid.
Yeah.
And who was that?
That was,
Like-
I guess, Weston, when he, you know, only did play fun and just having a good time. Like, that's all I did. It wasn't, you know, no business stuff, no podcast. It was just
Not
whatever
locked
I
in.
felt in that moment, I could, you know, probably do and get away with it. Not anything bad, but I just had freedom. And I'm not saying I don't have freedom now, but it's different now.
Because like your mind and body have accumulated responsibilities,
Yeah.
ideas,
Yeah.
concepts,
How the world
goals.
works. Yeah. Understanding what needs to be done to accomplish what I want to do.
But like your sense of awareness, that was there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would
And are
say
you
so.
still connected to that same sense of awareness?
I think it is still connected deep down in me.
Mhm.
It's
Even
just,
though you look different.
I get,
You're an adult.
I guess I can't access that same being of me anymore. No.
You can actually. I'm not trying. I'm trying to. I'm just seeing if you're able to recognize that, like your own sense of awareness, because we're gonna change, right? Like I'm getting gray hairs in my beard.
Right.
My body is constantly changing. I'm gonna get physically older, regardless of how much I optimize myself.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
But my sense of self is gonna remain the same. My sense of awareness.
Yeah. I believe I'll always have that kid in me. I do view that sense of awareness. I can always bring that out.
That's your perception.
Okay.
Do you see what I'm not trying to put you, because I don't want to put you in I want you to
No, by any means.
like there's no pressure.
Yeah,
I'm trying to point your own awareness back on yourself.
Right.
So you can realize that there is like an eternal part of you
Yeah.
that is
Like there's a spirit.
yeah, it's not connected to, you know, your degree, your business.
It's not static.
It's exactly. It's not even like an identity. It's just like
Who I am.
we all have that.
Right.
So that's the spirit, right? And so you have to understand, what is the spirit like?
Right.
It's different than what your mind likes, what your body likes.
Mhm.
It likes freedom. It likes chaos. It likes, you know, not chaos in a bad way, but just
I
like,
understand. It's variety.
not like, yeah, not, you know, one of the most difficult things for me was high school, and school in general, because of the structure. I don't like structure.
Mhm.
I like that freedom. I like the you don't know what's going to happen.
So that's your
and that's
spirit.
where that entrepreneurship, I guess, spirit comes from. No
Right.
pun intended.
And then you're letting yourself funnel that spirit through how you live your life.
Right.
And that spirit is connected to what it doesn't know why it wants these things,
Right.
but it also likes good things.
Correct.
It doesn't like bad things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll always have.
Right. So it's my point. We all have that. We all have that same seed. It's connected to that eternal realm. The reason I use these words is because it's like a deeper body of knowledge that I'm referring to with respect to, at the end of the day, all science and all theology are actually studying the same thing. Science is studying the effect of what's going on, the effect of the Big Bang Theory. Theology is studying the cause. Who, what, when, where, why.
Yeah.
But they're talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
The convergence of them is the same. So, you know, if we can just recognize that we are all religions agree, you are a spiritual being, you are an eternal being, you live in a physical body here, it is temporary. It has senses. Those senses are going to distract you from what your spirit wants. If you have a process of alignment, if we align our mind, body, and our spirit in the direction of our highest unfolding, then we actually are more optimized.
Right.
If we don't align ourselves, then we move more chaotically.
If we
so who wouldn't want that?
If we access that spirituality, it's like freeing in a way.
It's liberating, yeah. And then it also gives you a sense of purpose. So now, like, I'm going to live my life I don't have fear of death. I want to live to as long as I can so that I can do as good as I want. But if I'm living with purpose, I'm living true to myself, true to my spirit, and it gets cut short tomorrow, at least I was true to myself today. That's 100%. Big.
Yeah, it's huge.
That is.
I think that's, living true to yourself and, leading a life of purpose. I think, every person should strive for that 100%. And speaking of, living life with purpose, as it comes down to the podcast, the purpose of the podcast, it's called Living Fast. And, I know Jake and I have talked about it in past episodes. One thing we both find interesting is everyone kind of has their own story, his own value, and they definitely all live fast in their own way. So I guess, to tie it all back in, we talked about a lot of different concepts, a lot of different relevant ideas in terms of the mind-body connection. But when it delves deep of the purpose of the podcast, how do you live life fast, Ayhab?
When I'm living life fast, I can't but think of like a dunk. And because a dunk is 1 second, like to jump in the air, I posted a video about this. Like humans don't stay indefinitely in the air. They're going to come down. So for me, I want to be as fast as possible in that 1 second. So for me to do that, I have to be super conscious as possible. So I can, while I'm moving as fast as I possibly can, I can perceive as much information in that same second, that split second, as possible.
100%.
That's how I live fast. Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I guess that's super interesting because I'm sure that everyone wants to achieve their first dunk. And one thing that I got from this podcast is it's possible for everybody. And I think that living fast is a very important thing with that. So last off, I want to say thank you.
Thank you.
I want to say thanks for Jake. And
Jake.
That's a wrap on the Living Fast podcast.
Thanks for having me, guys. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate it.